Okay. Hi, everybody. This is the video and live streaming show. My name's John Lacey. I'm joined, as always, by Sam Proof. Sam, how are you doing this week?
Hey, I'm still fighting off whatever's going on, so if I break out in a coughing fit, I apologize in advance. But beyond that, great. How you doing, John?
That's good to hear. It's one of those great things that Restream likes to keep me on my toes. And like the second I went to turn off the music, it was complaining of some issues. But I think we're okay now. But it would be good to know if we're going out live to all the various places. So if you are watching live, please let us know in the chat where you're coming from today. We'd love to hear from you. Today we're talking all about starting Scrappy and actually using some cheap and free tools for video creation and live streaming. So I guess sometimes there's a temptation when you first get started to want to go out and buy all of the things and invest quite heavily and do that $10,000 home studio. And I love gear. Don't get me wrong. I love investing in gear. Tech is so exciting to me. But I think really when you first get started, it's probably more important that you think about, just creating a proof of concept, just getting some skills underneath your belt to start with. So, Sam, do you have any advice on, some of the things that maybe people can start doing just to get dip their toe into the world of online video?
Yeah, I mean, if you're watching us, you've already got the necessary equipment to get started. Whatever it is that you have on hand, your PC, your laptop, your phone, that's all you need. Like there's a webcam somewhere built into one of those things, probably. Get started with that. Like there's a sort of a rule I have where I don't put money into something that is not in itself bringing money into its existence. So like, and maybe not a lot, but you can't go and get a $10,000 setup and then 6 months down the road go, maybe this wasn't for me. Like you don't want to be that person, right? So
Sure.
like get started with what's on hand, and then as you go, make checks. Be like, is this good? Is this working? What can we upgrade at this point? Am I going to keep doing this for 10 years?
Absolutely. So I guess in terms of, maybe taking a step back, maybe taking stock quite literally of the things that you already own, some of the things that might be worth thinking about are your smartphone. Smartphones these days can do amazing things. They usually have a camera or two or more than two. You've got the webcam that may be built into your computer. It may be an external one, which in some ways is quite handy because you can move them around and reposition them and use little tripods and things to get going. Hi, Raquel. Raquel's watching from Texas. Thank you for joining us today. So we're talking all about sort of cheap and free tools for video creation and really thinking about the kinds of things that you might want to actually start with, before you get too carried away. And, one of the big things that we kind of take for granted sometimes is lighting, because you really need to be well lit when you're on camera.
Yeah.
And there are two things I'd say about that is, use natural light where possible. If you've got a large window, it's great if you can be in front of it. But if you don't have that ability, artificial light is fine. I do have some Elgato key lights that are amazing. They're beautiful pieces of equipment, but they are very expensive. And before I had those, I just had like a very cheap desk lamp, and it sort of had a posable neck, so I could really reposition it wherever I wanted to. And it's amazing how much even that level of of extra lights could actually help me show up even on a pretty basic webcam. So think about those kinds of things that you may already own. And I guess the other thing too, and we speak about this from time to time on this show, is what digital assets do you already have? So if you are creating content in any form, think about the things that you may have. Hopefully, you can build a content library. I know I talk about that all the time, but it's revolutionized my life, and I kind of encourage everybody to do that themselves. So if you do have text, if you have audio, if you've got video, whatever you've got, make sure it's there and it represents your brand and your project.
Yeah, I like you said, I have some fancy lights. I have like $100, light kit that was actually gifted to me. So yeah, look for those people who are giving up on doing what you're doing. See if you get a hand me down. But you don't need these. Yeah,
Hmm.
natural light is going to be amazing. So if you can set up by a window or even outside, sound permitting, that's going to be better than almost any studio light that, unless you're like dropping thousands on it. Um, but you can get really small clip lights for very cheap, and just put a good bulb in there, and and you're good to go. If you don't have a legit natural light source that you can use. Another thing I wanted to add to that is you can go to the dollar store and get some big pieces of foam core, just a big white reflecty sort of thick piece that you just can use to bounce some light on you. Because again, that's something that in a film set you're going to spend hundreds of dollars on this really big, reflector. You can a dollar, you get it for $1 and just angle it so that the light bounces back to fill in some of your shadows and stuff like that. There's a lot of little tips and tricks that you can do things on a budget for.
Absolutely, and I think we talk about starting Scrappy and using what you've got, and I think a lot of the times it's really important to think outside of the box. As much as I loathe that expression, just think about some of the things that you've got handy, and I want to talk you through some of the earlier iterations of some of my studio setup. Um,
Yes.
I used to use a whole bunch of textbooks as a microphone stand. And this is actually a blue snowball microphone, which is probably nothing I would recommend these days. But back in its day, and this
Yeah.
was probably a good 10, 12 years ago, it did the job. And I guess the other thing that is beside that is actually my Rode NT1A, and I've actually got this in a table stand from Rode, but it's not really designed to hold the weight of this particular microphone. So what I actually ended up doing was buying just a workout weight from Kmart here in Australia, of all places,
Nice.
1.25 kilograms worth. And I just put that on there, and it's amazing how effective that was. And I used that for probably a solid year before I moved on to other things. So I guess, it's worth being a little bit creative, and anything that you've got lying around could potentially help improve the height of a webcam if it's an
Yep.
external camera. Um, and I mean, there is. I should note that I do have this microphone on a boom arm, which is amazingly effective. But again, if you're not at the point where you want to invest just yet,
Yeah.
whatever you've got lying around can be really, really super useful. Do you have
Yeah.
any sort of MacGyver-esque tips on this one, Sam?
I spent many a YouTube video standing in front of a laptop that was on top of a chair on top of a table. So yeah, there's a lot of things to do if you don't have a tripod available to hold a laptop. And yeah, along those lines, lots of books and boxes to get things to the right level, and things like that. Yeah.
And I must admit, I don't know that I have them handy enough to show you, but I own a lot of mini tripods. And they're
Me
amazingly
too.
useful, but even still, I find that I probably need to stack them up on other things just to increase the height a little bit. So just think creatively about the things that are around you and how you might use them a little better. If there are particular pain points, that you're experiencing, by all means, go on Google, research, and see what other creators have done in that space to try and overcome those as well.
I've actually, to this day, still MacGyver things. I have a mini tripod that I've wrapped around a boom so that I can put my phone here to
Hmm.
get other things, like other
Nice.
shots while I'm doing my mic.
Very, very cool. Yeah, so absolutely. So those are all sort of great things to keep in mind. So this is the video and live streaming show. My name's John Lacey, and I'm joined as always by Sam Proof. Today we're talking all about cheap and free tools for video creation and live streaming. So, Sam, we're kind of blessed in a lot of ways to have access to some really great software and tools that are out there, some of which are actually free. So,
Yeah.
I guess, let's talk about streaming software first of all.
Yeah,
And
this
go
is an
ahead.
amazing time. Like back when I got started, in 2005, if you wanted to live stream, it was not there was no software. There you had to like have a platform that was going to pull in from your webcam. And if you wanted to do anything fancy, you have to try and finagle other softwares that weren't really made to do that and get them in there. But now you have OBS and all of these sort of rebranded spin-offs of OBS like Streamlabs and Stream Elements versions of OBS and all of that. And OBS is amazing. It is on par with like legit production software at this point. It's just one of the most beautifully created things I've ever seen. And every year it's been going and getting better and getting better. And it is just an open source broadcasting software with just a multitude of abilities. Like I've used it for a very long time. I've done some very complicated things with it, and I don't think I know the entire depth of what it can, which can make it a little intimidating to start. It's almost like sitting down with a ream of paper and being like, I'm going to make this a novel. You open it up and it's big black box and you're like, I'm going to make this a broadcast. But there's a lot of great tutorials out there on just how to get started and just setting up a few quick sources and scenes, and that's all you need. You don't need to worry about plugins and scripts and all of these other things. Like you can start streaming within an hour probably. If you're technically into it, you might be able to do it faster. You probably want a little research time. But yeah, OBS is amazing.
Yeah. We've actually done entire shows on OBS, and we will do some more in the future,
Yeah.
I guess. And I mentioned this to Sam a little while ago, but a number of people has sort of come out of the woodwork to ask me why I use OBS, and I also listened to a number of podcasts where people were complaining it's all too hard and too scary. And
Right.
I've got to tell you, I had 3 or 4 days where I was even doubting myself and questioning it, and I think. It's not that scary. It is incredibly powerful, but you don't need to know all the tools and all the settings to get started.
No.
It is free and open source, so it works on Mac, it works on Windows, it works on Linux if you're so inclined. It is literally free, which is amazing, especially if you're getting started. But it's also incredibly powerful, so it's something you can start with quite easily and grow into. And even if you're in a situation where maybe you are the on-camera talent and you've got somebody else who's your producer who's operating the software, that can be really powerful. And there are things built into OBS Studio specifically that will help with that enormously. But the thing I'm trying to do, and I've done some sessions on this in my other show, Coffee and Content, which you can find on YouTube if you go to youtube.com/learn live streaming. Is really to let people know that there are some settings that and some functionality which are quite useful even outside of live streaming. And one of those is the ability to just record your screen. Yeah. So if you ever need to show somebody something, you need to demonstrate something, you need to give some software organization some feedback about their things, that is so easy to do in OBS Studio. But the other thing that I try to tell people about is actually the use of the virtual camera. So you have the ability to go in there and actually set up a scene. You can have yourself on camera, you can have your logo, you can have some promotional messaging, and you can literally just click a button and you can make that scene available in all of the traditional software that uses a webcam. So it's amazing how much that can improve how you show up on Zoom meetings or Microsoft Teams or any of those things, and it's not difficult. And again, I have an entire show on how to do that. So I guess in some ways my mission is to convince people that whether OBS Studio is the right tool for you or not, you really don't need to be scared of it. It's not going to hurt you. It's
Yeah,
fine. Just
yeah,
relax. But that rant aside, it is incredibly powerful and it is literally free. I must admit, I haven't had much experience with um, the the versions that you've alluded to in terms of Stream Elements
sure.
and Stream Labs. I've never really felt the need to go beyond OBS because it has worked so beautifully for me.
Yeah, I did, play with Streamlabs a while back, mostly for when I was doing stuff at Mob Crush, just because we needed people to quality assure on that because we had a plugin that worked with them. Um, and it's a little easier to get started. They give you a little, it's a laid out a little smarter. It's got some intuitive like things to get you right into it and set up your first scene and stuff. But it does use a considerable amount more CPU is what I noticed. And I don't think that has changed from what I've seen on Discord and Twitter and stuff like that. um, so it may be an easier low lift way of getting into the OBS frame of mind. And then once you've figured it out, I would highly suggest going to OBS Studio. That being said, our mission today is to get you streaming immediately, and you don't need any of that stuff because almost every single platform nowadays has a built in version uh, that will just get you going. So you just pop on your phone, go into YouTube, go into Twitch, go into Instagram, go into TikTok, and you can stream from your phone right away.
Absolutely. I guess the one thing that I would say, and it's a weird quirk, but as someone that does spend a lot of time on LinkedIn, LinkedIn Live is actually the one place that doesn't have any kind
That
of
doesn't,
native ability
yeah,
to go live. You literally have to use some other tool to do it. So I guess that's probably a great opportunity to talk about some of those other tools. So
yeah,
we're going to talk a little bit about StreamYard and Restream, and these are both platforms that have free starting plans. So you have the ability in sort of both Restream Studio, which is their in-browser broadcasting tool. So you can and this is literally what we're using this morning for this. I say this morning. It is morning in my time zone, but that's a whole other discussion. But we're literally using that here. So, we've got both of our webcams here together. We're going out live to various places. I've got different features in terms of images and graphics and chat messages and overlays and things that I can use here. It's very easy to get started, and I guess for those people that are a little bit daunted by OBS Studio, this will be a much gentler approach to going live.
yeah,
So for both Restream, and that's Restream.io and StreamYard, they do have these free plan options. They do include branding for the services themselves. So
yeah.
again, keep that in mind if you are using these. That will be there. But again, especially if you're just starting out and you want to see if live streaming is for you, it's probably a really good way of starting completely free. You can get into these pieces of software, try these things out. And again, I guess as Sam has noted, for a lot of these, you can literally just go live on your phone. So that might be another way of doing it as well.
Yeah, and I don't think either of those have an app version, but there are similar apps out there that will do things like that. The names of which elude me at this time. Um, the cool thing about something like a Restream or a StreamYard is once again, it's very easy to get started. They have a bunch of scenes created. They have the ability to invite guests in, just like we're doing here. Which with OBS you actually need like a third party sort of fix to do that, or some creative know-how. And both, oh, actually, I don't know that Restream has this. I know StreamYard has an audio library, so it has some music you can use and things like that. They both let you play videos on top of doing cameras and stuff like that. So it's really, like seconds to get yourself going on that. And there are a bunch of other services out there these days that do similar things. But also, I don't think you touched on they both allow you to multicast to different platforms at the same time.
Absolutely. So again, and Restream. It's a little abstract, but Restream has the ability to take a stream from any kind of software like OBS or similar
Yeah.
things and just send them out to different places. But they do also have the Restream Studio, which is that browser experience I just described. And I might just mention too. You mentioned the music, so there is
Yeah.
the ability to add some royalty-free music. I think they call it background music.
Right.
You literally have to choose from their options though, and to be honest,
Yeah.
I wasn't terribly excited by any of them.
Sure.
So again, in some ways, and as someone who is honestly a bit of a control freak, having to give up some of that control and embrace some of the Restream default scenes and their positionings, it did. I'm going to level with you. It annoyed me at the beginning, but the nice thing about this is that everything else is within this one window. So if I wanted to bring on a chat comment, for example, it's just a couple of clicks away. It's sort of that ease of use versus power and customization and flexibility thing. So, but again, especially for newbies, I think it's a really good thing to explore.
Yeah.
So in terms
Uh,
of actually editing some video, so again, whether you're doing live streaming or whether you're doing recorded and edited video, or even if you're just editing your live stream, let's talk about some of the. There are a lot of free options. We're probably only going to cover one today, and that is something I know Sam is very fond of, CapCut. So talk to us about CapCut. Why do you like that
yeah,
particular
I,
piece of
I love
software?
CapCut. CapCut. It is free. It comes to you from ByteDance, which is the same people that made TikTok. Um, and one of the great things about it is it does auto captioning really pretty well. There's usually a little touch up to the actual text that you have to make, but that seems to be with anyone. You can style that captioning 100 ways to the sun. It is very customizable. It's so good. It lets you switch between different aspect ratios. You could literally make a cut, in a 16 by 9 format, and then duplicate the entire project, convert it to a 9 by 16, and it's pretty good about automatically just finding the center point on that and relocating some of those clips for you. So I can't express how like just amazing it's been. And like every time I'm like, oh, I've thought of something I wanted to do, and just today I had to do a green screen thing, and I was like, oh, I've never done that in here. Oh, it does it, and it both gives you the ability to manually pick your color point, or it has an auto cut feature that just processes the video, and within 4 or 5 seconds, it's cut. It's got it all masked out. It's amazing. Um, you have access to a bunch of different filters and effects and transitions, and like I would like honestly say I could put this up against Adobe Premiere, and like 98% of my projects I could do in CapCut.
And I must admit, I don't really use CapCut for editing, but I have been sort of using it to burn captions onto my video. And
Yeah.
to be honest, I'm genuinely surprised by how good it is, given that it is literally free. And I keep looking for the catch. I'm,
Right.
I'm just waiting for something to come along and trick me. But it really does seem to be quite a good program. And like again, I don't want to pull out the grumpy old man of video card again, but the things that we were using, like Windows Movie Maker 15 years
Sure.
ago,
Yeah.
you people have no idea how good you
Yeah.
have it
Oh,
these
the days of
days.
iMovie were terrible. Like,
Yes.
oh my god, it was the worst interface ever. The only complaint I've ever had about CapCut is that I can only do one timeline per project. So if I wanted to do like a remotely different version of something, I had to just duplicate the project.
And I must admit, I kind of do that in Camtasia, which is not a free piece of software. But I tend to just save my projects multiple instances because I do want to make changes to them. And it
Yeah,
is possible to sort of select parts of the timeline and export them out as separate things. But I kind of prefer working on a project by project basis. But
sure.
certainly, if you are interested in video editing, CapCut is currently our recommendation for good free software. It's worth noting too that there is a web version, there is an app version for your phone, and there's also
Yes.
there's a desktop desktop version as well. I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's definitely available for Windows. I'm not sure about other platforms. You might want to check that out if you're a Mac user. But
Yeah,
again,
there's a
just
Mac version.
okay,
Yeah.
cool. So just head over to CapCut.com and check it out because it's bizarrely useful and it's literally free. So
And it does have like a cloud sync, so you can start a project on your phone and transfer it over to your desktop. I haven't done it yet, but it does exist.
and it just like this has nothing to do with anything really, but I noticed previously, when I would export my projects, CapCut would say, you know, here's the folder that your video has been rendered to. Do you want
Yes.
to open up YouTube? Do you want to open up TikTok? And they've kind of
Yes.
gotten rid of that YouTube option now in a recent update. So
Oh, I didn't
I
even
guess they're
notice
trying
that.
to downplay the fact that you might want to use that video somewhere else, but you know, you
Right.
certainly can.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so this is the video and live streaming show. I'm John Lacey, and I'm joined as always by Sam Proof. Today we're talking all about starting Scrappy and using cheap and free tools for video creation. And right now we're sort of talking about, well, we have been talking about some software that you might want to try out to get started in both terms of live streaming and editing. Another great resource that we have is the ability to actually access some royalty-free assets that you might want to use in your video projects. I'm just going to talk about this one because this Incompetech, Kevin MacLeod has been producing royalty-free music that anyone can download for at least 15 years. Like some
Oh,
of my
yeah.
earliest YouTube videos include his music. And it's been really interesting to see the evolution of TikTok and YouTube Shorts and some of his compositions. Like monkeys spinning monkeys is a really popular one. It's been really cool to see that those continue to live on in that format. And the thing I would say is that the website is very, very basic and it's full of advertising. But again, you do have the ability to go and find some music that you can include. You just need to include that attribution. So that's and that's often I guess let's assume that the people looking for this advice are complete newbies. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna put my copyright hat on. I know you want to put it's a little weird given that the TikTok and YouTube Shorts do have some licensing arrangements with pop music
Yeah.
providers these days, but generally speaking, you can't just take your favorite song and throw it on a video and put it on the internet. That's just not how that works.
Yeah.
So again, think about, you know, what are the resources that you're including in your projects and where do they come from, and always check those licensing arrangements. So, Sam, do you have any resources that you like to use or recommend?
I mean, I love Incompetech. That is a great database. Harris Heller, who is uh, basically the like prince of doing or the king of doing what we do, talking about streaming and content creation. He about a year ago launched his own royalty free and like the promise of forever royalty free music called Stream Beats. It's a much smaller library, but he is continually putting new things into that. I think he has 2 or 3 other artists helping him out at this point. Um, and they have a wide enough variety of artists or of genres on there that you can use those. And I'm not even sure if he demands a attribution, but you should always do that. And then per platform, yeah, you'll have the ability to get different audio libraries. I know YouTube does have an audio library, and they uh, you know specifically hired artists like my friends RKVC to make music that other people can use in their streams. So you can look for those. Gosh, I wish I knew what the direct link on that was. It's probably youtube.com/audio library or audio. Um, but it is mixed in with all of the other stuff. So, per platform, there's usually some sort of original sound, original audio tab that you can find. But definitely make sure you know what you're using before you use it. Because as I've said in the past, you can go into YouTube Shorts and create something in the app. And then as you're publishing it, it goes, oh, this is a copyrighted song. Doesn't tell you that until it's done publishing, which is super annoying. So I think it's always best, unless you know you're doing something specific to a trending thing. But if you're doing something under the guise of live streaming, 100% play it safe. Do not use a pop song. That being said, there are different licensing agreements per platform. So someone like Twitch, you can technically get away with using some of that copyrighted material in the live, but the minute you archive that live stream and it becomes a VOD, all of those copyright infringements will come down on you. So don't do it.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing. Like, think about the the lifespan of the content you're creating. If you do want it to be around forever, I'd probably downplay the use of third-party materials, even if they are
Sure.
royalty free.
Yeah.
But you know, that's kind of a decision you need to make as a creator. I kind of like to, you know, invoke, um, you know, rather than using sort of memes and copyright sometimes with
Yeah.
myself. Uh, Mind different platforms. I guess, you know, in terms of maybe some images, we do have things like Unsplash, so that's a place that you can go and download some images to use in your project. And another one is Pexels. It's
Yeah.
pexels.com. It's basically pixels, but with an E instead of an I. So those are some other options. So really think about, you know, what you might like to use. And I guess, really, if you think about, you know, what are the kinds of things that you want to be known for, and the things that you actually want to do, you know, I would try to put your own content first and foremost. I would probably try to avoid using too much third-party tools. But again, there's plenty of stuff out there. Just check those licensing arrangements. If you do need to actually include some you know, attribute that to the person that owns it and created it, that's always a really good and useful thing to do. So make sure you do that as well. All right, so this is the video and live streaming show. I'm John Lacey, and I'm joined by Sam Proof as always, and today we're talking all about cheap and free tools for video creation and live streaming. Sam, I guess, you know, we've been talking about a lot of free options, and those are great to start with. But if you are sort of at a point where you think you would like to invest some money, and maybe you've done this for a little while and you've got a good sense of how it's going to work and that you're actually committed to it, what are the things that you would probably think about investing in first?
Yeah, I would always tell people to put your money into audio first. Like, people will be very forgiving with video and grainy and, you know, jittery shutter speeds and things like that. But if your audio is crackly and fuzzy and like sounds like you're in a tin can, they're less likely to stick around. Audio is the go-to. There's a lot of, especially in the live streaming space, it's almost akin to the podcast space. A lot of your viewers are listening only. They don't necessarily even see that your camera sucks. So yeah, I would put whatever money you can, first and foremost, into a better mic. You can even get like pretty solid little wireless lav mics for 20 bucks now. These things are great, and this will work with your PC or your phone. And then, you know, you can upgrade to a Rode, you know, like down the line, and a Zoom H6 down the line. You don't need to drop $300 just because you have it. You know, take it in steps. Don't worry about it.
Absolutely, and I guess again, we're quite blessed these days to have some really decent microphones throughout there, including some USB only options. So,
Yeah,
you know, there are microphones from Samsung. There's things from Rode. There's things from Shure. Um, and a lot of the microphones, a lot of the newer microphones actually have the ability to use USB or XLR, and I kind of love that. That's kind of what I recommend to
yeah,
most people, because if somewhere down the track you do decide you want to, you know, invest in a Rodecaster Pro, which I've got to say is not a cheap piece of equipment, but it's
no,
such a beautiful piece of equipment. I've never had any regrets having purchased this. It's an amazing thing. But that said, you know, if you do have the those two connection points, you do have a lot of flexibility in terms of how you use it. And again, I think for most people, if you're a single person on a single computer, USB microphones are what I would recommend because they're really easy
Yeah.
to get started. You know, you literally plug them in, you select them in whatever software you're using, and you're good to go.
Yeah, and USB mics, like, they're a lot cheaper generally than your fancy pants mics. They typically are a little on the quieter side from my experience. I'm sure there's other, you can artificially boost it within certain programs and things like that. Um, but yeah, that's a perfectly good place to start.
Absolutely. So, I guess once you've got the audio, and again, once you if you keep doing this, there's always the opportunity to upgrade. I guess you don't want to spend too much upfront, especially if you're not invested in actually
Yeah.
continuing to generate content and to do this on an ongoing basis. I guess the other thing that may be worth articulating at this point is that if you do have access to companies that will rent this stuff out to you, by all means do that and try them out and see if they'll work for you. And if they do, maybe you can think about investing further down the track. But once we've got the audio, you know, to a point where we're happy, and it's funny, audio is something a lot of people have a lot of anxiety about. And the thing that I like to tell people is, as long as I can hear you and I'm interested in what you're saying, I'm actually pretty forgiving about a
Yeah.
lot of these things. Um, but that said, you do want to kind of make the audio as good as it can be. And especially if you're in a sort of echoey room, you probably want the mic closer to you and further away from other noisy things.
Yeah.
And in some ways, having the microphone closer to you, and there is a point of diminishing returns. You probably, depending on the kind of microphone that you're using, you probably don't want it too close. Although this microphone in particular is very, very quiet, and that's sort of both its superpower and its problem. So I mean, I
Sure.
do have to actually sort of amplify this even before it goes into the original Rodecaster. But that said, the nice thing about this is probably at least a solid meter away from my computer, which can get a little bit noisy with the fan. So move the microphone closer to you and further away from anything that else in your room that's making noise. And I guess maybe we can talk about microphones in a deeper way. And I do actually have a bit of an audio engineering background, so
Nice.
maybe that can be its own sort of episode. But again, we have dynamic microphones and condenser microphones. Generally speaking, a dynamic is probably better for you, although the frequency response will be a little bit different. But all that is great stuff to know. But I guess in terms of what we might invest in after we get our audio started, talk to us about cameras,
Yeah,
Sam.
I mean, depending, if you have something available, if you have a DSLR that will work, that's amazing. You may need to get a capture card at that point, which is a little bit of an investment. The go-to for most people is this little chumpy, the Logitech C920, which is a great, mid-range camera. There are cheaper webcams out there. You can get this camera, which is just a generic no-name webcam, for $20, $29, and it's gonna be less. This is like a 1080, and that's like a 720. It like advertises as a 1080. It's a lie. It's a 720 at best. So yeah, you definitely want to get in there somewhere, depending on what you're doing and what the needs of that camera are. Um, again, you can be using multiple inputs. You can have multiple cell phones if you wanted to do some fancy stuff in studio, by just using, like OBS and a few other plugins to like bring in cell phones as different cameras. Um, but yeah, the Logitech's great. You can actually plug that in and it'll work with other cameras that are in there to give you a multiple camera experience. You have these gamers that have like 5 different cameras, so you can just get a whole bunch of them, and they don't even have to be the same color gradient and stuff like that, because again, people are very forgiving about this medium. um, but yeah, if you have a little more, you might try and figure out how to bring your DSLR in.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we kind of live in a world now where there are some very high end web cameras, and
Yeah,
some of these things are $300-400 worth. And
right,
at that point, I kind of wonder when it might be better to actually just go and buy a real camera.
right.
Obviously, you need to think about how it's connecting to your computer, and
Yes.
I mean, I use the Sony ZV-E10, which is a really good. It's been great, and it's not a cheap camera necessarily, but it is like a fully function sort of point and click camera. It does have USB capability, but the problem I had with that was that you have to unplug the cable, you have to turn it on, you have to adjust some settings, and then you plug the cable back in. And I literally have mine mounted in a teleprompter 24/7, so that was
Right.
super inconvenient. Ultimately, what I ended up doing, and again, it's an investment. It was not particularly cheap, but I did get the Elgato capture card that the Camlink is what I'm trying to think of. So the Camlink, and I bring that into my computer via that USB device, and that has worked really well for me. Again, none of that is particularly cheap, but it's been an investment for me, and I sort of use
Yeah.
that for my content and also my day job. So it's been quite useful.
Yeah,
I
the
guess.
Camlink really good. This is not it, but it's basically about this size. It's
Hmm.
it's fantastic. There are other Elgato capture cards that are all basically about the same price point, but there's God, what is this one? The HD 60S, which is a small device about cell phone size, and they all do fantastic. You can even get them hard mounted into your PC if you have the slot for it.
Yes, so I mean those are all great options, but again, they're probably they are investments, so you need to think
Yes.
about when you're ready to commit to that. I guess are there other things that we might consider about investing in? We've spoken about my audio, we've spoken about cameras. I have alluded to the fact that I use a lot of little tripods for all kinds of
Yes.
things, and they're reasonably inexpensive and they're
Hmm.
everywhere and they're all slightly different. So, I mean, I have so many of them, it's kind of ridiculous at this point in time. But I do find that if I am recording something and I need a particular angle or a particular vantage point, that they're
Hmm.
incredibly useful and you can put them on tables. So, I guess what other accessories do you think might be useful or have been useful for you, Sam?
I mean, I am a huge fan. Oh, dang, I shouldn't have done this with the one that's attached to my mic. That was dumb. I'm a huge fan of the like scissor mount,
Hmm.
which you kind of see here. Ignore the tripod. Having those things on so that you can move them around. Although my cords are a mess, so I've just done something, and I hope I haven't messed up my audio. I'm gonna mute and fix this. But also, you can get like even if you don't have a GoPro, you can get a pack of GoPro accessories that will give you attachments that will go to just a regular mount, and then you can have
Hmm.
a suction cup. You can have this giant stupid clip, and like mount phones and cameras in crazy places that you wouldn't normally able to even with a bendy tripod. So yeah, I think those are awesome. And while I fix my mic, yeah, what are your things?
Sure. So, I guess the other thing, and again, these range in price quite dramatically, but we spoke about the importance of good audio. One of the best things that you can do in terms of getting better audio is to actually have the microphone closer to you. And one of the best ways of doing that is to actually invest in a boom arm. And they start very cheap in price. That does have some implications for the build quality, so you want to keep that in mind. But if you can afford it, it's really good to do that because I have seen people that literally hold their microphones while they're talking on live streams, and they'll just move it around and they'll smack it around. And I shouldn't
Like
pick
I
on
did.
Sam, but he's quite animated. He talks with his hands quite a lot, and he will sort of smack it every now and
I
then,
just did,
which
yeah.
is yeah, which is
I should
hilarious.
not be
But
given shock mounts. I'm terrible at keeping the rubber bands on this thing.
but yes, I guess that's the thing. And again, a lot of the cheap microphones, especially if they're a condenser microphone, you need them to be relatively close to your mouth. And we see this all the time with a particular microphone that I'm not even going to use the name of because it's so divisive in the community. But it'll sit on the desk like a meter away from the person, and it'll capture every echo of every part of the
Yeah.
room. So again, even if you do have that particular microphone, which I'm not going to name here, if you can bring it close to you, that's half the battle, and then you can potentially turn it down as well, which can be quite useful. Because really, what we want to do is make sure that we're capturing you, we're not capturing the ambience of the room. So keep that in mind. I must admit, I'm trying to sort of rack my brain about what other accessories might be useful, and I think one thing, and Sam sort of alluded to this a little bit, but even the tiny little ring lights that you can put on your camera, if you're just doing something live out in the field, or even just recording a video on your camera, just a little bit of extra light can be quite useful, and those things are honestly incredibly cheap. So, those are things that you can go off and invest in. But again, think about what you might already have access to. Again, if you've got some artificial lighting, if you can work with the natural light that you've got, then that's something that you can certainly think about. So this is the video and live streaming show. My name's John Lacey, and I'm joined by Sam Proof. Today we're talking all about starting Scrappy and actually thinking about things that you can do to get started without spending too much money. And it's a good idea actually. You can think about producing a proof of concept for the kind of things that you want to do relatively cheaply. Develop some systems and make sure that you're ready to go before you drop a whole lot of money. So, again, one of the things that I sort of mentioned earlier was just thinking about some of the things that you have access to already. And my big thing is that I'm concerned about what people see on camera. I'm less concerned about things that are around it. So if you're not looking at the
Yeah.
microphone, it doesn't really matter what it looks like as long as it works.
Right.
So I as I said earlier, I've done things with textbooks and weights and all kinds of things. I think you do need to embrace your inner MacGyver sometimes.
No, I agree. And I think a lot of people would be like, "Well, why wouldn't you suggest a green screen right away?" And while I've gone through the phase of, and I know John likes his green screen, of having the green screen and liking it, I don't think it's necessary. And often it is more trouble than it's worth. Um, so yeah, I don't put that very high on my list of like that is a need for your production, even though now I have several green screens at this point. Um, but I would add on hard drives, even though it's not immediately needed. Get yourself some hard drives.
Absolutely. And I guess that's the thing, like any video content that you're creating is going to take up space on hard drives, and you want to think about backing that up. If
Yes.
you've created anything that's even half decent that you put your time and energy into, we want to make sure we've got copies of those things. And
Yeah.
you may want to come back in and repurpose and remix those things later on. So that's definitely a great point. Um, Even things in terms of there are free accounts for things like Google Drive and Dropbox. So if you are sharing resources with other people in terms of going live or in terms of creating videos, those are a great starting point. But again, you'll need to think about how you organize your files because they do have finite limits on them. And again, if you do decide that's a way that you want to work moving forward, you can always pay to upgrade to those services.
Yeah.
I guess what I would say, just to briefly, because Sam
Yeah.
did mention the green screen, and it's funny, if I didn't have my green screen, you would literally just see a door and a back of
Sure.
the side of a bookcase. So I mean, I sort of a constraint that I've embraced, and I just deal with it. And to be really honest with you, I'm quite happy because a lot of the things I do are software demonstrations. So it's a great way of just having me pop into the corner of that and be within the action. But I guess the thing I would say about green screens more generally is a lot of the time people will tell you these things and I'm sure they mean well, but they'll be like, it has to be this particular type of green screen and you have to have
Right.
37 lights. And in my
Yeah.
experience, that has not been true at all. And I've done things with just a bit of green cardboard. There are very,
Yep.
very cheap sort of circular things that people put on their chairs. And I know Garen Perkins on LinkedIn, I'm sure he uses one of them. And except that he shows you behind the scenes occasionally, you would not know that it isn't some huge green screen behind him. So you'd be surprised at how effective some of these things can be. The thing that I've discovered is not useful though is a lot of the software. So
Uh-huh.
even things like Microsoft Teams has sort of a faux green screen thing built into it, and it's terrible.
Yeah.
And even as someone who is literally in front of a physical green screen, it does a really bad job of sort of chroma keying that. So I always do that via OBS Studio, and I sort of use the virtual camera to bring that in. But I just wanted to mention that briefly.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point to make. And you know, if you're doing something where green screen is inherently useful and it's a practical thing, then by all means you should, you know, get it. But also, like John said, you don't have to break the bank on that. You can just go to the dollar store, drop 20 bucks on green paper and like get enough of the area to get your close up shot, you know, set. Because the software, especially OBS and CapCut, has gotten so good at being able to chroma key that you don't need the 5 point lighting setup that I learned back in 1994.
Absolutely. So, this is the video and live streaming show. I'm John Lacey, and I'm joined by Sam Proof. And today we're talking all about cheap and free tools for video creation. Obviously, there's a lot out there, and we can't cover it all within an hour. But I hope we've given you some ideas about things that you can think about exploring. Maybe think about when is appropriate to think about upgrading, and just making sure that you don't. I guess the danger is that you'll go out and buy all the equipment and you'll do it twice and you'll just go never again. And then you've got all this
Right,
equipment and Sam will probably buy it really cheaply off eBay or Craigslist or something,
right.
which will be great for Sam. But again, like I think you want to pace yourself. I think any kind of content creation is a long-term game and you need to sort of be a little bit strategic about how you approach that.
Yeah, for sure. It's a crazy time to be alive. Inflation is horrible. Make sure you can pay your bills and feed your family and like before you drop any money on an amazing PC or a giant camera. You don't need a Red, and you don't need a Rodecaster Pro, and you don't need X, Y, and Z. Just get going with what you have on hand.
Absolutely. I think that's good advice. So, again, think about, what is it that you're trying to achieve? Think about your goals. Think about the tools that you can already use, and that you may already have. And it's funny. I'm, this is, and again, poor Sam has probably experienced this already, but I'm weirdly obsessed with Microsoft PowerPoint, not as a presentation tool, but just as a graphics tool. And I use it for thumbnails. I use it for all the images. Occasionally, I'll go off and do things in Photoshop and Illustrator, but it's just something that was already on my computer that I'd never really thought about, using it in a way other than was sort of originally described. And I think you'd be surprised if you go off and have a look at some of the things that you already have access to, whether it's software, whether it's hardware, and think about how you can use that in a more creative way.
Yeah. And I mean, along those lines, Canva is great for creating your own stock assets and thumbnails and cover images and things like that as well. And I was going to do a whole talking point on this, but I skimmed over it. And now I don't know. But there's so many AI tools out there that will help you create music and video and, images specifically. So you can, for the most part, find all of the, completely customized things for free until you decide you want to pay for that service, which up to you.
And again, like I think it's important to go back to your goals and your aims,
Yeah.
because I think sometimes we forget that people are watching our videos because they want the content, and we can get so distracted about animations and flashing things and
Yeah.
sound effects when really there's a good chance somebody wants to know, how do I use this piece of software? Somebody wants to be entertained. It's not necessarily about all the extra things, although the extra things can be nice and sometimes they can elevate the production
Yeah.
levels of your project. But really, I think focus on your message, focus on your goals, And just think about, how you can actually bring that message to the world. And I guess, just set your expectations accordingly. But, as we say, think about using some of the tools that you already have and, how you can use those more creatively. And again, just when you're ready to upgrade, by all means, do it. We're not anti-gear. We love
No, we love
equipment.
gear.
We love it, but again, just make sure you don't go into bankruptcy to fund
Right.
your gear habit.
Yeah.
That's probably all we'd really say about that. So, do you have any final thoughts as we begin to wrap up the show, Sam?
I mean, just get started. Just do it. Get going. Like, you've got to have a video. You've got to have audio. If you've got those bases covered, you're good to go. Start doing stuff today.
Absolutely, and I guess as someone who can be a bit perfectionistic, sometimes I will think I've got to watch every video on the editing software before I get started. And the honest truth is, you will learn more by doing than you will by watching.
Yes.
So,
Yes, you
so
will.
get involved. Take that first step in the right direction. I mean, if you have any burning questions, would love to hear about them, and certainly in terms of topics for future shows, that would be great too. So, thank you for the people that have joined us today. We do appreciate it. We've had a little bit of banter in the chat today, so that's been wonderful. So Sam, where can people find out more about you and what's your content?
Yeah, you can find me as Sam Proof on just about any platform except TikTok, where I'm official Sam Proof, and you can find all my links at samproof.tv.
Nice. And if you want to head over to johnlacey.com, if you want to learn more about me, I've got all the links to all the various places. So thank you for joining us today. I know there have been some the joy of time zones, but also the joy of daylight savings starting and ending. It's been a little bit weird for a lot of us.
Yeah,
So thank you
things are moving
for
around.
joining us if you have. And if you're watching this later, we appreciate that as well. So we'll be back probably the same time next week, but look out for the event invites for that. We look forward to talking to you more about video and how you might use it in your projects.
And next week, we're going to talk about how you might actually get some of that money to get some better gear.
Absolutely. So join us then. We're talking all about monetization and how that might factor into your plan. So that's
Yeah.
great. We look forward to talking to you again soon.
Bye.